Governor Baker's been getting legislative support for management reforms on the MBTA, but there's still some resistance, especially from the Carmen's Union. The governor hopes to get approval for a temporary board to focus on management and finances, but he also wants more leverage over contract disputes with T employees. Our guest has been following the troubles at the T and his work for the Pioneer Institute. We'd like to welcome its research director, Gregory Sullivan. Thank you very much for being with us, Gregory.
Thank you.
The director at the Pioneer, Jim Sturgis, says the union and this arbitration element here, it's the biggest stumbling block to reform. So how big a deal is this?
Well, this has been a historic problem at the T. In fact, people might remember that back in 1980, the legislature tried to address the financial problems at the T at that time, and they put in what they called a management rights bill at the T, which was a way to kind of constrain the unions and try to keep costs down. And they reacted very strongly and went on strike for 2 days and shut the system down. And there's pretty much been nonstop litigation since. It took a full 16 years before that act finally made it through the courts and arbitration. So the T union's very, very strong. I was over at the State House for the legislative hearings, and the place was wall-to-wall union lobbying. It made me think of the snowstorm. I take the T every day. It was so cold. I thought, boy, I wish some of these commuters would be up here at the State House walking around at the same time.
Now, I know there's some people out there, they don't like sometimes what they hear about compensation. They don't like to hear about these unscheduled days off that affect service. But on the other hand, how much of the T's problem is this?
Well, I would say that the T, it's a very large part of the problem financially. The T right now receives about $1.5 billion a year in taxpayer subsidy. Tickets pay for somewhere around 25% of the cost of the T. The rest comes from local property taxes in the T district. A lot of people don't know that. Comes from the sales tax, a lot of money from the gas tax. So the legislature thinks of it as a budget buster because it just adds up to so much money that it's a financial problem. The T's got a lot of problems beside labor costs and overstaffing. They also have a problem that there's a lot of debt that's been built up at the T, and that drags them down compared to other agencies around the country.
Now, as far as the arbitration rules, if the union doesn't like the way something the management has come up with wants to go, they take it to an arbitrator, and how is that different from other public employee unions?
Well, it's very different. I mean, in fact, the MBTA is the only agency in the state that has a special status for arbitration. It's really final binding arbitration. Once the arbitrator makes a decision, that's it. All the other unions, for example, say the Boston Police and Fire Department or the state unions, if it goes to arbitration, ultimately the government agency has to approve it, and very often they don't approve it. It goes back to the bargaining table. A big effect of this was seen just very recently because the legislature tried to address a big funding shortfall at the T in 2009 by transferring the T employees to the state healthcare system, and people might remember that. The T healthcare system has more than 300,000 people in the cities and municipal employees in the state, and it's very cost effective compared to almost any other system because it's bargaining power and purchasing power. But the T employees would have had to pay a larger portion of the monthly payment, the premium, larger co-pays, the same as everybody else is paying, but they fought that. Even the legislature passed it and made it a law. They fought it, took it to Superior Court, they lost there. They brought it to the federal government and they filed an action to block the T from receiving any future federal money. That kicked it into binding arbitration, and that matter is still being deliberated as we speak. And that now is almost 6 years ago. So things get dragged out in the binding arbitration. That's going to be fixed.
Another issue of reform here, the governor is looking for more flexibility as far as outsourcing work on the T, maintenance or repair work. And what do you see here as far as the potential for that?
The MBTA has a rule. The state has a rule that applies to the MBTA and some other agencies too, that basically is the most restrictive anti-contracting rule. It's a protective union rule that was put in effect in 1993, called the Pacheco Rule, or the Pacheco Law, after Senator Mark Pacheco of Taunton. He was a sponsor. And as an example of how it works, the T wanted to outsource some of the bus lines out of Charlestown garage going back a few years ago. Transit agencies around the country who outsource, especially late night runs, it's never the whole system, it's just parts of the system. It costs a lot less. For example, the T costs about $16 a mile to run their buses. The purchased buses, the purchased service buses in Massachusetts run by the regional transit agencies about $7. That's a huge difference. So the T wanted to outsource some of the service. That was passed. The board of directors voted for it, but the Pacheco law stopped it. So the governor's trying to get that right back, to be able to outsource some things at the T. He's not trying to bust the unions at the T, very clear about that. He's not trying to take away their benefits, but he wants to have the option to go out to bid and get the best price for some of the services.
Here's what the other thing the governor's looking for is this special board to focus on management and financial reforms. And he's been pushing this for a while. Since he first came out with the idea, he's basically taken control of the Department of Transportation Board. So if he's got all his own people looking over things here, why is this special board so important?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. In fact, that was kind of the question of the day. Everyone was, I think, kind of surprised because after the huge crisis, Governor Baker asked the MBTA Board of Directors, which is really called the MassDOT Board, to resign. And I have to really give these people a lot of credit because they did. I mean, it may sound strange to say that, but I think it takes a lot of honor and respect for the system to do that if you're an appointed member of a board like that. And so people say, well, he already has control. But the reason that he wants control of the special board, it's like almost like a receivership board with special authority to look at contracts and go in and make some big decisions. When I was at the hearing, and he had two people with him. One of them is named Jay Ash. He was the receiver in Chelsea. That was in receivership, because that was a very big success. If anybody's followed that, very big success. Same thing in Springfield. He had the person, Chris Gabrielli, who was a former candidate for governor, and he said, and he told the committee members, if you want to know why I want to do this, here are two success stories, and they're telling me this is what you have to do if you want to get control of the system. So the legislature, and amazing, isn't it? You know, to have the Democratic legislature, they seem to have taken a liking to Governor Baker. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's kind of unusual. You've been watching Beacon Hill for all these years. You don't see this every day. Maybe back to Bill Weld, we saw it a little bit when Senate President Bulger was there. But I don't remember this kind of reception for a new governor from the Democrats in my memory.
Right. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me on.
From the Pioneer Institute, Gregory Sullivan.